Charlie from Epic Dice Studio. This is going to be episode 1 of my future vlogs, I guess. Instead of just focusing on battle reports, figured take a few minutes to chit-chat about, current happenings in the world of gaming or whatever I'm currently working on or things that I may be interested in. Feel free to post anything you'd like in the comments, any questions or whatever, and in future videos I will reply back to them in the video, so that way we can have kind of a more than just a one-sided discussion about whatever we're talking about. So today I am putting together models for the game SAGA, which is a skirmish-based historical game. The core set from Studio Tomahawk, I think in cahoots or partnered up with Gripping Beast Publishing. It's Gripping Beast something, but Gripping Beast does models as well as the game, along with Studio Tomahawk, that's right there on the bottom, and it's essentially battles in the Viking Age. The core book runs for about, I think, 30 to 40 bucks. It is 74 pages, and it comes with, in what I find to be a very unique style of playing a game, what they call battle boards. So the 4 armies that you can be are the Welsh, the Vikings, the Normans, and the Anglo-Danish. And each battle board, in addition to the battle boards, you can use regular 6-sided dice for this. But each of these little images here on these battle boards, there are specific dice created for this game by Gripping Beast that'll have these little icons on them in order from common, uncommon, and rare. So the simple way is 1, 2, 3 on a 6-sider is your common, 4 and 5 is your uncommon, and 6 is your rare. At the beginning of each of your turns, you're going to roll a certain amount of dice, and based on the images that come up, you will assign them to these different locations on the battle board. This column over here is basically, you can put as many dice as you want here, and you can repeat these actions as many times during your turn as you have dice to basically do with. So like in this the example up here, so for any one of these symbols, you can assign a die here. Then during your turn, you remove the die and you follow the rules. So in this case, it's an activation. Discard one of the dice, take the die off, and you can activate a unit of Hearthguard or your Warlord. I'll go into the unit types in a little bit. And then basically each of these, either or of these symbols here can represent these 5 on your board. These 2 columns over here are once per turn only. So you roll your dice, you decide where you're going to put them. This has to be this symbol, blah, blah, blah. This can be either one of the 3 symbols. Some cases you'll have to have 2 symbols, either an either or, such as like that, where you have one of the 3, or in this case where it's got a plus, you need to have the uncommon symbol twice on 2 dice. So you need to have 2 dice here in order to be able to activate it. It really leads to a weird dynamic of how you play the game. I'm used to a more 40k Necromunda War Machine style where, it's my turn, I do everything on my turn, roll to attack, everything has a job, and you do a job throughout your entire turn. This game really relies on the fact that not everybody in your army or in your force may be able to do something. If you don't get the right dice, and you're only limited, so it's not like you can get all of these filled up. You have to actually plan your dice for your turn as well as your opponent. Some of the abilities on here you play during your turn. Some of the abilities on here you play as a reaction to whatever your opponent does. So you will leave dice on this board potentially to either A, psych out your opponent, making them think that you're going to be planning for something ahead, or B, you're going to react to something that this particular item says you can do. The army that I'm putting together is the Vikings. I've played a few games now as Vikings, and I really like them. Of course, I'm Swedish, but naturally, so I tend to go with the Viking theme. My army is more melee-based than some of the others. The Welsh, for example, have a lot of nice abilities that have to do with archers or shooters of some type, as well as the Norse have a few abilities that are nice for their archers as well. But anyway, let's get into the models. So in this game, there are basically 4 types of models. You have your warlord, and then beneath him, you have your Hearthguard, which are essentially like your family troops. If you're a fan of Game of Thrones, it'd be the equivalent of, you have Ned Stark is the warlord of the Starks, and then his bannermen are the other outlying lords that he fully trusts, and these are the best. They are the best of the warriors that they will lead into battle. Following underneath the Hearthguard are your standard warriors. So those are your actual soldiers that belong to your lords for whatever reason. And then the last one are the levies. The levies are the equivalent of your peasants or the best way to put it is your peasants. Those people that you are basically in charge of, that you are now shanghaiing into, hey, we're going to battle, grab your bow, grab your sling, you're coming with. And more often than not, levies in this game are your only ranged troops. There are a few exceptions, but mainly your levies are your ranged fighters. Your Hearthguard and your warlord and your warriors typically are predominantly melee. Each in progression from warlord, Hearthguard, warrior, levy, it's progressively harder to give orders to. So on your battle board, on the top here with your activations, the topmost one, any one of the 3 symbols can be used to activate a Hearthguard or your warlord. So that means whatever you roll on a d6, any symbol, you can always allocate a die there and be able to activate your Hearthguard and warlords. The next one down for the Vikings are the warriors. So you can either use a common or your rare. Okay? So that means common is typically, like I said, is like 1 to 3 on a d6, and the rare is a 6. Here, for your thralls, which is the equivalent of your levies, you need the uncommon or the rare. So if, like I was saying up here, 1 to 3 is your common, 4 and 5, and then 6, you're really on a 4+, you can activate your levies for these guys in general. But more often than not, because your levies are only there specifically to shoot, you'll generally want to spend most of your dice moving your more melee-oriented guys, unless you have a more shooty army, which is completely possible. But just as you know, your 4+, or your 4+ for this, you can have bad dice rolls. I know, I'm very familiar with having bad dice rolls. So then, as you roll your dice and you assign parts there, you then get to activate them based on whatever dice you assign, and then your abilities either plus or minus. Like for example, the Vikings have one. As you progress through the game, every time you get involved in a fight, you gain what's called fatigue, which is a simple representation of, your guys have gotten to do something exciting and they get a little tired. If they activate more than once per turn, the first activation is always fatigue free, shall we say. But any activation you do after that, regardless of what the activation's for, you'll gain a fatigue. The more fatigue you have, the more opportunities, the less you'll perform. The Vikings, for example, but they have a few abilities that actually help negate fatigue, which is a very big big plus. The Normans tend to be their specialty tends to be more mounted troops. There are certain, like, I don't think they don't necessarily say that Vikings can't be mounted, but they don't have rules that specifically say that yes, you will have mounted people. The Normans, they specifically say that Normans can be played as mounted people or as just your warlord, Hearthguard, and warriors can be mounted. Your levies not so much. But the Normans tend to have abilities that really focus nicely if your army is mounted. Your Anglo-Danish seem to be more like the middle ground. They don't seem to have anything that's really super shooty or super melee. I find they're very balanced. They are the catch-all army. I would say they're the easiest army to probably play. And then lastly, the Welsh is definitely the more mobility-based as well as shooty-based. The shooty-based, not necessarily for their battle board, but the Welsh, as far as their rules go, almost everybody can have a javelin, which would be used as a ranged weapon. Normal levies will have like a bow or a sling, and they have a 12-inch range. If they stand still and you activate them, they can shoot. Normally, if you move in this game, the only thing you can do after a move action is get into melee if you're within range. But the Welsh, since they predominantly carry javelins, just about everybody can move and then throw a javelin as I don't want to say a free, it's just you use it as part of the move action. Unlike a bow, which has a range of 12 inches, the javelins only have a range of 6. But on the plus side, when you move, you're moving the equivalent of 6 inches. So you still have that 12-inch threat, but you have to move closer to your opponent and to be able to use it. And since almost everybody in their army, warlords, Hearthguard, and warriors, tend to have javelins, if they're not getting into melee, they can at least chuck some javelins at you and do some damage that way. But most of their battle board abilities is a lot of mobility based. The Anglo-Danish, as far as their special rules, they have what are called Dane axes, much larger axes than normal. The plus side is they hit the opponent easier. The downside is that because they're two-handed, your defensive capability is lowered. Overall, I would say it's a fun game, but my biggest problem with it, unlike 40K and other games, the Warlord only has 1 hit point. It's meant to be a quick game, don't get me wrong. It's kind of a beer pretzels type skirmish game. Get together, throw some miles on the table, and get playing, and you'll be done in about, based on the size of your game, you'll be done in about a half hour, maybe an hour, depending on how big you want to go. Yeah. And then but like I said, the Warlord only has 1 hit point. The Warlords have really nice abilities. They get to activate for free. Their name on the battle board is just a bonus. So if you actually wanted to have your Warlord activate more than once, you could. But he gets to activate for free. One of his abilities is he can shrug off the first unsaved hit that he takes. So, and I don't want to say if he gets swarmed, but should he take a couple hits, and you get your chance to save and you fail, you fail one but make the rest, you still count as being perfectly fine, that you ignore that first fail save. It's nice. Secondly, his abilities are, because typically in this game it's 1 unit moves at a time. The Warlord has an ability to, when he activates, he can force or basically shout an order out to somebody and go, "Hey, you're coming along," and he can basically have another unit walk along beside him. So that way, instead of spending a die to use one of your other unit on one of your units, he can basically go, "Hey, you're within range. You and I, we're walking up this way." Or if you want to get into a fight, you can have the Warlord give an order to basically, you're moving along with me, and you're going to get into a fight. They're 2 separate orders, and they have slightly different game mechanics of how you actually play them. but it is it's a nice little way to get in this game you typically can't gang up. It's always like 1 unit versus 1 unit as far as battle fights go. So your warlord basically has the ability to go, yep, warlord and a group of people are going to get together and beat up on some other singular unit, which is fun to do. So let's get into the models. The models are very cheap. I got this box of Viking Herdmen that I'm putting together. It's 39 bucks, and you get 44 models. That is pretty darn cheap. They are 25 millimeter. They are. Get that up, try nice and close. No head, but just at least one of the arms on there for now. 25 millimeter figs, plastic. They do make pewter models as well. I like the plastic because they're cheaper. I get more models get more bang for your buck. You have your you have your warlord, Hearthguard, warriors, and levies. As far as this game goes, it is a point-based game. Build your army based on points, and then you fight. So compared to other games that you or I are probably familiar with, if you play like a small game of 40K, you're playing anywhere from say like 500 to 1,000 points. There's very few models on the table. This one, it's very similar, except their points basically run. You have a gamut of a game going from 4 points to 10 points, and 10 is considered like a grand game. And I'm sure that there are probably rules out there for like multiplayers going, which will have the game go. But essentially, for an average game is six points. So the way it breaks down is each point that you spend will give you X amount of models depending on the level of ability. So starting at the top, your warlord is free. You always get a warlord. There are named warlords in the rules that will cost you points, but they generally have much more spiffy rules. But in general, if you just take a regular warlord that has just the standard warlord rules, you get him for free. For 1 point, you can get a unit of Hearthguard. A Hearthguard unit is 4 guys with the just general weaponry that they come with. There's no, unlike Warhammer and other things, there's no like purchasing. You don't have to purchase extra war gear. It's all just assumed that they come with whatever they naturally come with. In the case of the Anglo-Danish with their Dane axes, you can basically create, if they have the option for them, they'll say, hey, you can get you get 4 Hearthguard. And if you like, those 4 Hearthguard can get Dane axes. Doesn't change their cost. It's just essentially that you're just building, you're making sure your models have Dane axes. That's all it is. So for 1 point, you can get 4 Hearthguard. And those are your elites, shall we say. For that same 1 point, instead of getting 4 Hearthguard, you could get yourself 8 warriors. Also, since you're dropping down in the power level, shall we say, the Hearthguard are much better in combat. Your warriors are going to be less viable in combat, but you get more of them. So there's your trade-off. And then lastly, for 1 point, you can get a unit of 12 levies. So 1 point gets you 12 models that do nothing but shoot. So, I mean, they can get into combat, but they are predominantly there to be your ranged fighters. If you wanted, you could play a 6-point game and buy nothing but levies. So 6 times 12 is 72. So you could have 73 models, 72 units of levies, or say 72 models for levies, and then 1 warlord. And for example, if I was using all my Vikings, I would need 4s, 5s, and 6s for my levies to activate and do anything. But when they got into close combat, they're going to get smeared. So that's one of the things. The whole idea is essentially try to build a force with an equal or a well-balanced amount of each and play towards the strength of your battle board. Like, for example, I can bring levies as a Viking, and my levies, they just say, they're either armed with slings and or bows. It's all a range 12, but the point is, the fact of the matter is that my battle board doesn't have any really nifty abilities for my ranged troops. So yes, I could bring them just as a support unit, which isn't terrible, but do I really, instead of getting 12 figures that potentially could do some shooting damage, I could instead bring 4 really, really good guys in close combat. So I tend to rarely, if ever, bring levies, and if I do bring levies, I only usually bring 1 point. So yeah, there's that. The one thing I don't like about this game is that I find it lacks a certain depth of strategy. I don't like that the warlords only get 1 hit point. I'm so used to all these other games where my warlords will last a little bit longer because I'm playing 40k, and in current edition my big boss man has 5 wounds, so I make some really good saves. He'll last a while, blah blah blah. In this game, they just essentially it's almost like once your warlord's dead, you might as well just stop playing. There's really no point to continue playing. If your strategy goes awry and your warlord bites the dust for whatever reason, if it's not the primary goal of the scenario, just stop, start over, try again. It seems to still just be, hey, whoever gets the charge off will generally get the benefits. And I will admit, I have not played a ton of games. I'm still relatively new to it. I've played the Viking. I've played each army once using just generic figures. These are actually the herdmen, and I have some warriors. They're just generic gripping beast models that are meant to be just like plain old warriors. I think they're good to use with any force. With these being actual Viking warriors for myself, I'm just basically just going, yeah, I'm not looking for anything special, and be able to learn more about the game. And I've never been much of a strategy guy anyway. I'm kind of rambling here, but yeah, I've never been much of a strategy guy. I build things to look cool in my head. So like I have this little inner dialogue in my head when I play a game. More of like an inner movie theater or inner movie director. So I know what I want to build. I know what I want to play in my head because it looks cool on the big movie screen in my imagination. And typically when I'm playing a game, I don't look at the board and go, okay, I should move this here, I should move that there to best counteract my opponent. No, I look at it and go, okay, I really like these models. Who do I want these models to go fight? And what will look cool in my head? So yeah, I don't win too many games except through sheer luck, or because like I said, I really only play my own within my own circle of friends, and I think we all have kind of the same mentality. So really, if I can get if either one of us gets our guys to the right position to fight who we want to fight, that's all that really matters to us. But yeah, the real strategy in this game, I'm sure there's some real strategies, and if any of you guys play Saga and you know more, you are well versed in the strategies of the armies, more power to you. And I good luck in the wars ahead, as they say in Game of Thrones. But yeah, I can't play like that, because to me it's always about what looks cool versus, you know, I have to win. And this thing just does not want to glue. It's being a pain in the butt. So yeah, that's what I'm currently working on. I have a commission that's currently drying. I got some Nurgle-fied stuff. The gentleman gave me a third-party Nurgle Demon Prince. I can't recall the name of the company that made it, but it's very neat looking. He also gave me a the Vindicator, right? The Vindicator is the Rhino chassis that's got the big gun out the front, 24-inch range big gun. And then he also gave me the, I think it's pronounced the Dredeo Dreadnought from Forge World. It reminds me of like the old school BattleTech rifleman that has the two, the pairs of big guns off the sides. It's got these really big weapon or bullet feeds coming off. Lots of data. That currently is sitting in a nice bath to get rid of any kind of mold releasing agent residue. So yeah, that's what I'm currently working on. As far as commission, this is my stuff. This is for fun, and to basically branching out into different games. That's essentially my thought process. I've always been a games workshop. I don't want to say a fanatic. It was really the only miniature game that I knew about other than BattleTech. Pardon me. That at the time my friends were playing. So I got into it. I liked it, and I've stuck with it the whole time. So yeah, that's how it works for me. But yeah, so I'm gonna wrap it up here as I continue to put these guys together. Do me a favor, put down in the comments what were the games that you got really interested in, or that got you into the hobby. What kind of games are your fan favorite? I would admit, I would probably guess that most of you are probably in the War Machine or 40K universe that watch my videos, but I could be wrong. Is there some historical game out there that's really, really cool, simple, and in my case, cheap to get into? Since I tend to have to buy armies for myself and my opponents to get people to play. So yeah, put down in the comments what you're playing, or what got you into this hobby, and I will see you in the next vlog video. Happy gaming.